Our next guest is the author of The Z Word, Dennis Finocchiaro.
Hello.
Now, Dennis and I actually have a long history together, as he used to be my teacher. What was it like educating the man who would one day become podcasting superstar Saint Mort?
Well, first off, I have to say that I was hoping we wouldn't talk about this. Which probably should have been the hint that we would be talking about it. What was it like teaching you? It was probably like, you know, people who have a pet rock?
Yes.
And they try to teach it to do things, and it really just sits. And then eventually they just give up and say, sit! And it sits. That's what it was like teaching you.
Now, the Z Word, what is the Z Word exactly? Is it like Zardoz or Zodiac?
Oh, it's actually zebra?
Zebra. It's a book of zebras.
Yes. The zebra word is really what it is. It's about a lot of zebras that just kind of start eating people's grass and the neighborhood gets mad. You know? Because they spend a lot of... You know, like it's one of those neighborhoods where they really love their grass.
Sounds riveting.
Yes.
Okay, so Z actually stands for zombie. And now this isn't a single zombie story, correct? It's a collection of different stories about zombies?
Yes, I would actually call it more like flash fiction. You know, it's a bunch of really short stories. Some of them end abruptly, some of them don't. Some of the characters they're just recurring. They keep showing up and either saving the day or ruining it, depending.
Now, is there any particular character in the book that you... I mean, there's a lot of stories in this book. Is there any particular characters that you feel especially attached to that might come up in future writing?
Yeah, with that one, I would say that Zachary. There's a character named Zachary. You don't really know his last name. It's. I'll tell you. This is a secret, but his last name is actually Ward, like W-A-R-D.
Yeah.
So that later, maybe I'll pretend like the next book is called the Z Ward instead of the Z Word. But no, he's actually. I love his character because he's like the classic nerd. Lives in his grandmother's basement. Not that I know anybody like that, but he lives in his grandmother's basement. And what he does is he eventually decides he gets bigger dreams and wants to move to California. No, that's actually a different nerd, I know. But no, he lives in his grandmother's basement. And he loves zombie culture. He reads every zombie book. He watches all the movies. And one day he looks outside to see that the zombie apocalypse has happened. And he basically uses his knowledge of zombies from pop culture to become the most violent zombie killer in the story. So he actually is recurring. He's one of the ones that shows up here and there. He saves the day. But yeah, he uses all of that knowledge of pop culture to save people. And as the back of the book says, hopefully meet a girl that will kiss him. Except he probably doesn't just want to be kissed.
Now, are you yourself... I mean, obviously you don't hate zombies, but would you consider zombie movies among your favorite of films? Or because I know that you were a film teacher and you still are a big movie nerd, but I mean, you also like some pretty pretentious stuff, which zombie films normally wouldn't fall in the category of.
Yes, I will admit I like Wes Anderson, but... But yeah, I mean, I definitely am a zombie fan. I probably wouldn't have thought to sit down and just put together all these stories if I didn't love them. I do. I love them. It's probably one of my favorite kind of movies.
Is there any reason for it? I mean, it just seems like lately there's been a really big zombie resurgence, and I've never really quite understood it myself. Like, I like zombie movies, but I don't like them over any other horror movie. What is it that draws you to zombies so much?
I think it's that idea that, well, first off, I believe that the zombies will be slow.
Yeah.
You know, you've got those two versions of movie zombies where some of them are fast and some of them are slow. I think they're slow. And I think there's something just terrifying about how slow they are. You know what I mean? Like when you watch the Night of the Living Dead, when you watch the older ones, when the Romero classics, like those are the ones that the zombies just are. There's something, you think to yourself, I could just walk by them and shove them out of the way, but eventually you get to that point where you're surrounded by them and you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah.
I think there's something about that I like, and I've always liked apocalyptic stories. I love, one of my favorite books was The Stand by Stephen King. Those stories tend to reach to me anyway, and there's just something fun about the zombies. I mean, I would say the thing that brought it back for me, even though I loved all the Romero movies back in the day, I would say that my favorite recent one was Shaun of the Dead. You know, that brought him back.
That's understand. Yeah, and I think Shaun of the Dead is easily in my top 5 zombie films. I might be the only person whose favorite zombie film is Return of the Living Dead, but
Probably.
yeah, the Romero movies are classics for a reason.
Yeah.
Now, you're not a specifically zombie writer, though.
No, and I don't want to be typecast as that.
Do you have, I know this is your first novel. It just came out. It's available on Amazon.com. Do you already have plans for the next book?
Well, I actually have a book that I wrote before the Z Word that I've tried sending out there, and I haven't gotten any bites on it yet. But I do have some ideas on how to make it to improve it. And I do think that the story, while it is apocalyptic, there are no zombies in it. So that's my next plan. And I mean, I do have an idea for a sequel to the Z Word that won't be short stories. It'll be one long story, and actually Zachary, the character Zach, will be a part of it. So, and this isn't really a spoiler, but he does eventually meet a girl who will kiss him in the stories, and she'd be a part of it. And I mean, I'm not going to give away the end, but the end of this book does kind of give you the idea of what could possibly happen in the future.
Well, that's fun. Now, what was it like getting publishing? I know for a first-time writer, it's always a difficult task. Did it take a lot of... I would imagine it took a lot of time to find a publisher for something that not just is strictly zombies, but strictly flash fiction zombie stories that are only maybe a page or two long in some cases.
Yeah, that was difficult. I definitely sent it to a bunch of places, and then I heard about Living Dead Press, which is the one that I eventually went with, and they liked it. They called me, and I liked how personal they were. They're like a smaller one, but I just liked how personal they were. It was difficult, though. I think that every writer, whether they're a New York Times bestseller or someone who just got their first zombie book published, will tell you the same thing. You just got to keep trying. It's like and writers always say that, and you're like, oh, that's really cliche, but you got to persevere. Like if you believe in what you've done, and that's the case with any of the creative arts. You got to just keep trying. You can't give up on yourself.
All right, now let's talk a little bit about the author of the Z Word. Beyond zombies, you are also one of the biggest yard salers I know. I would say at least 95% of your house is based on purchased yard sale pieces. What would you say is the most bizarre thing you've ever gotten while yard sailing?
Wow, the most bizarre. I think that I'd have to go with both of our favorite item, the day that we both found a Pee Wee Herman doll. And we each found them. I mean, you came with me that one time. We went, well, we go a lot, but you went and we both saw them at the same time, and it was like, there's 2 Pee Wee dolls. And it was near your birthday. It was near his birthday, everybody. So I let him buy the better one. And the better one had a jacket. Mine, which I can look at from here, is not wearing a jacket. Yes, he is shirtless, and it's awkward. So, I mean, out of all the things I've bought, and I've got some stuff that I love, there's just, you look at that, and I mean, at least some people will walk in my house and be like, that is creepy. There's a Pee Wee doll. And he already has a really creepy smile on his face, and his cheeks are much rosier than they should be. I don't know if someone put makeup on him. Is yours that rosy cheek?
I don't think mine's as rosy cheek. Yard sailing is where you also got, and I wish you still had it, but the Evil Ernie puppet.
Oh, yeah.
Which was possibly the greatest find I've ever seen. But we could have built it. Like, we could have made that puppet, because it was clearly a homemade Ernie puppet with eyes that were about like frog size, placed on Ernie's face.
Yeah, and they kind of looked in other like away from each other a little bit. So that was creepy. I bought that because it was so creepy and strange, and I knew that there were so many creepy and strange people in the studio back then that would have played with it, that I brought it. And it definitely served its purpose.
It was worth its price.
It was worth the nickel that I believe it cost. And it probably cost them even less to make it. That's how terrible it was. And he had that odd talent of eating his own face.
Yeah, where did you even discover that you could make that particular puppet eat its own face without any issue?
Who knows where the strange things that I come up with come from? They're just there, you know?
And you were also the person who got me into the Marx Brothers. I had checked out Duck Soup out of curiosity because I'd heard it was one of the funniest movies ever made. And I had told you that I saw it and really liked it, and you were the one that was like, "Oh, you got to see Animal Crackers, and you got to see this one and this one." And now I have 2 Marx Brothers box sets of all their movies. So I think you owe me a couple $100.
Listen, if you didn't get them on sale, that's your problem.
Now,
I love the Marx Brothers. Groucho is probably one of my out of all the comedians that I've liked. He's probably one of my inspirations because I always loved how straight-faced he was. And he always had those really clever lines, and I wish that I could come up with a couple that clever, but my favorite is outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. That's always been my favorite of his, even though he has tons.
Well, and I think you influenced... I know you influenced me. I think you influenced a lot of people, including past guest Chris Pierre Domenico, into pursuing the careers that we pursue, and just the things that we like. I would have never, ever seen the movie Harold and Maude had it not been for your class, and now it's my favorite movie of all time, and it's a film that I share with other people. What are some of those things that you want to share with our viewers, movies or books or bands that if they've never seen or heard them, they should actively track down?
That's a tough question. I mean, the movie, definitely Harold and Maude. If anyone's listening to this and hasn't seen that, you've got to see it. I mean, that movie influences people's lives, especially if you watch it at the right time in your life. But I think overall you got to watch it. And easily tying into Harold and Maude is Cat Stevens as a musician. If you haven't listened to him, I know everybody knows the song Wild World. Everybody knows that song. And if you don't, if you download it or Google it right now and listen to it, you'll be like, oh, yeah, I do know that song.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he has so many great songs, and they were all in the soundtrack of Harold and Maude. But, wow, books. That's a tough one. Let me just look around. And
we're surrounded by your books.
I'll pretend to continue talking as if I'm thinking when I'm just looking at books. It's tough because, I mean, I've loved so many books. I think, let's think. One of the ones that people wouldn't think of. Oh, Being There by Jerzy Kosinski. Did you ever hear of that one?
No.
It was also a movie. Also,
I was going to say...
Peter Sellers was
the Peter Sellers movie, yeah.
Outstanding book. It's about this man whose name is Chance, and he seems like, he's been brought up oddly, or he's socially different, let's say. And he wakes up one day to find that the rich man who's taken care of him his whole life is dead. And his lawyers are there, and they basically kick him out of the house. And all he knows about the world is television. The only thing he knows about anything is what he's seen on television. He's completely been a recluse. He's helped the old man in his life, and that's it, and watch TV. So his idea of life is that he walks out of that. He just assumes that something's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
Because that's how it works in television, because it's a 30-minute show or an hour show. I mean, that's what you learn from it, is that something else will happen.
Yeah.
And even though life's not usually like that, he goes out and assumes life will happen, and it kind of does for him. And it's neat because everybody thinks he's this brilliant man, and really he's just one of the most simple people you'll ever see in either movies or books. So yeah. I'd say Being There was a great one.
When you've also given me, book-wise, you gave me Perks of Being a Wallflower, which for, an 11th grade student was the book that got me to actually want to read. Like, it was something that I recommend every high school student read that book. You got me into King Dork.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what the... Yard Sailing, you got me to buy The Alchemist and The Stranger.
Yeah, those are both good ones.
Were incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. I think that Perks is... I agree. Every high school person should read that. I mean, everyone. Because I really think it's... And I've had a couple English teachers rip me a new one for saying this. I really think Perks of Being a Wallflower is the modern-day Catcher in the Rye. And when I said it... I said it in a meeting, and I was yelled at, and I mean, people were horrified that I said it, but now I think that some teachers would be willing to admit it, because you're starting to see it, even though it has a lot of stuff that doesn't belong in a book that you read for school.
Yeah.
I mean, you're seeing it all over the place now, and some schools are adding it to their reading list, even though there's sex, even though there's drinking, there's drugs, like even though those things are there, they're still adding it because they're realizing that it is the modern day Catcher in the Rye, in my opinion.
And I think King Dork also carries a lot of that, which is ironic because King Dork is a book about... what I like about King Dork is that it's a book about Catcher in the Rye, and this guy making fun of Catcher in the Rye and the people who are obsessed with it and hold it on this pedestal. But the more you read it, the more you realize this character is Holden Caulfield.
Yeah.
He's like it's, and the fact that it was written by Frank Portman,
yeah,
who's beforehand was only known as the lead singer of the band the Mr. T Experience. That was pretty much unknown to most people except for like diehard punk music fans from the 90s. Mm-hmm. Like it's surreal. It's surreal how many musicians lately have been proving to be really good authors. Mm-hmm. Especially when you wouldn't think of it based on the music that you heard from them. And I love Mr. T Experience. I'm not trashing on them at all, but listening to their music, I never would have thought that he would write a book like that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there.
Well, since we're talking about horror, we should talk about a horror book or two. I would go with. Did you ever read House of Leaves?
No, everyone recommends this book.
House of Leaves. I mean, there are parts of it I love and parts of it I hate, but the horror aspect of it, I mean, it really starts to freak you out. Like there are certain parts where they're going into these rooms I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but a photographer and his wife buy a house. They've got all these cameras set up, and suddenly new rooms start appearing in the house, and they don't understand where they're coming from, and people go into them and never come out. And I mean, the rooms when they go into these places, I mean, I was legitimately freaked out at least a couple times from that book. And I know a lot of people who read it, and I mean, it's a thick book, but it is intense, and it's not just about the story; it's also the way they laid it out. Like if you look at it, even if you just flip through, you see all these pages where, maybe the font's smaller, or it's upside down, or it's almost mirror image.
Yeah.
And these things, as simple as they look when you flip through, like they are directly related to the story, and it starts to freak you out a little bit. So, horror-wise, I would say House of Leaves. I think it's Mark Danielewski or something like that. It's great. Danielewski, maybe. There's
a book that I had read once, and I need to finish it. It's part of a 2-part series, and I only read the first part, called Mayhem. Not Mayhem. Oh my god, I can't remember. I know the second one's called Havoc, but it's a kind of a kid's novel, and it's about these kids who read this comic book that the story is if you say this like chant while you're reading the comic book, you will get sucked into the comic book, and it's like a Tales from the Crypt type comic book.
That sounds neat.
And they kill you inside the book. Like you die inside the book. You either have to survive for like 3 weeks inside the book, or you get killed. Like it's kind of like Stay Tuned, which I'm sure is not what the author wants people to compare it to.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to talk about Stay Tuned.
But what's cool is that whenever, obviously they're not going to do a comic book strictly on that character. It just kind of is like little vignettes. Mm-hmm. So you'll just be reading the book, and it shows you whenever it's a part that would actually appear in the comic book, instead of being written, it's drawn as the comic book.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was like, this is really cool, because you understand from where the perspective is where someone else is reading it, knowing that it's their friend in there and not knowing what their friend's fate is, because it'll just cut off randomly, and then it continues the story from where they stopped appearing in the comic, and their friend who's reading it has no clue what happened to them from that point.
That sounds intense.
It was pretty intense. For a kid's book, it was really intense. I don't know why I keep thinking it might be called Mayhem, actually, but I know the second book is called Havoc, for sure, for show. Well, thank you for coming by, Dennis. The book is The Z Word, Living Dead Press, and you can find it on Amazon.com. Is there anywhere else, or is that...
No, that's it right now, and you can get it for Kindle, too, which is cool. And you can like us on Facebook, because we're going to do a book signing soon, where you can actually come and listen to me talk about stupid things again, if if you enjoyed this show, then there you go.
Yeah, be sure to tell them that you heard them on the Saint Mort Show, so I know that I have a listener.
Oh my gosh, I would be shocked. Hopefully you'll be there, and I can say, "Oh, would you like to meet the host?" And they'd probably say no, or scream and run away.
I'll be there in a tuxedo.
Not a tuxedo shirt, like a t-shirt?
No, like legit tuxedo, okay. I think.
I'll spot you from far away, though.